Okay, we are live. Welcome to Tamarah's Closet today. I'm really thrilled to have another very special guest with me. She's actually here with me today in Greensboro, North Carolina. She has been the current district attorney for Guilford County for the past 4 years, and she's currently up for re-election on May 17th. Back in 2008, she was elected district judge of Guilford County, serving 9 years prior to becoming the district attorney. When she was elected in 2018 as district attorney, she was not only the first woman DA, but the first African American woman DA. So I'm very excited to have her here. She also worked as the assistant DA in Guilford County for 9 years, and where she worked in all criminal courts, both district and superior in both Greensboro and High Point. Her experience includes prosecuting serious felonies in superior courts such as murder, rape, sex offenses against women and children, kidnapping, child pornography, and felony assaults. And during this time, she also worked in juvenile court for over 5 years in High Point in North Carolina. So I want to go ahead and bring her out because we got lots of questions. So welcome, Avery Crump. Welcome, Avery. I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Tamarah, for having me on. I am pleased to be here.
I'm so glad I met you at that luncheon a couple weeks ago. So this worked out perfect. And Avery, I always like to start back in your childhood a little bit, sort of to inspire people and know that they don't always have to do what their parents did to have talent. So when you were a young girl growing up, do you have any memories of, did you declare what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I did. When I was in middle school, I used to watch Perry Mason.
Oh.
And yes, so I became fascinated with that show. And I decided then that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wanted to be on the other side. I wanted to be representing victims of crime, and I wanted to be helping people. And I've stuck to that dream since I was in middle school. That's when I decided.
Wow, that's amazing, because most people change their mind at some point when you stayed at that young. So were your parents in the legal world at all, or anybody in the family?
No, we have no lawyers in our family. I was the first.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, what is there anything that you remember that you've stuck with you all your life that your parents taught you? Something that you remember that they taught you that you have sort of lived by or it stuck with you in the back of your mind?
I was always taught to try hard and you can do whatever you set your mind to. I was always told, well, you're smart, you can do whatever you want to, you don't have to get sidetracked, but always give it your all. Whatever you do, and the sky is the limit, just make sure you give it your all, make sure you try hard, and just keep going. And so when I told my parents that I wanted to be a lawyer, and like I said, we didn't have any other lawyers in the family, we discussed, well, what do you have to do to be a lawyer? Where do you need to go to school to be a lawyer? How long is it going to take you to be a lawyer? So we discuss things like that. And then what part of the law are you interested in? And for me, it's always been, I'm interested in criminal law, except I was interested in criminal law on the prosecution side. So I was interested in prosecuting those charged with especially violent offenses against women and children. And I did that. I started my career in New York when I graduated from law school and then moved back down to North Carolina. But throughout my entire career, it's always been focused on the criminal law side of the law.
That's amazing that you knew what you wanted to do so young. And it sounds like your parents have always been supportive. And I think that's important. But when you so you were already, that's pretty much, you were close to being a teenager then. So you never really wavered at all during that time.
No, I didn't. It was always the law for me. I will tell you, when I was trying to come up, because I'm not from a very wealthy family, and when I was thinking about going to college, about getting funding for college. So we always apply for scholarships, of course, when we're in high school. But I did think for a small period of time, maybe I should go into the military because the military will pay for you to go to college. And I didn't want to graduate with a lot of debt from coming out of college, but I did not go into the military. I was lucky. I received a lot of scholarships and financial aid to go to Carolina. And so I stuck with that route. So I went straight to college after graduating high school. I didn't take the military route.
Wow. Well, I mean, you sound like you've just had a solid, known what you wanted to do for a long time. Do you remember what point in your life you really started paying attention to politics and when it became important to you, or?
Well, when I was in undergrad at Carolina, I did an internship with Carl Fox. At that time, he was the elected DA right there in Chapel Hill. And I would go to court, I would listen, I would observe court. And when I was under the 3L practice, I also did an internship at the Mecklenburg County DA's office under Peter Gilchrist at that time. And, just listening and paying attention and speaking with lawyers, I decided that at some point I knew I wanted to run for judge. I wanted to be a judge. And eventually that came to fruition. But it took some time, but I stayed the course. I'm one of those, I would consider myself a planner. So I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I had to plan my life. Okay, where do you want to go to school? Where do you want to go to law school? But also in the back of my mind, where can you get money to go to school? And where can you get money to go to law school? And even when I went up to Bronx County to practice to work as a prosecutor, I didn't have any family in New York, but that was part of that planning process of going to a big city to get some experience. And so I've always just been a planner, writing things down and just sticking with my goals and sticking with the outline that I come up with. And when I moved back down to North Carolina and I was working in the courts, I knew I wanted to be a judge, but I knew I had to get some experience behind me before trying to be a judge. And so I had 11 years in as a prosecutor when I ran for district court judge in 2008. I don't think judges are politicians, but unfortunately we have to be elected and have to be reelected. And so that is part of politics. I consider myself really to be a public servant for the people.
That's good. I think that's a good way to look at. Now, did your parents pay a lot of attention when you were growing up to politics, or were they kind of?
No, my mom didn't. My father would listen more to it and form opinions, but they were not. Neither one of them were big into politics.
Yeah,
they just weren't. They weren't big into politics, and neither was my brother. No one was big into politics, and no one was big into being a lawyer. As I said, I'm the first one in my family, but I will not be the last one because I have a son. I have two sons, 18 and 20. And my 18-year-old has indicated that he wants to be a lawyer. So we'll have, and my husband's a lawyer as well. So I may have been the first one. Yes, my husband's a lawyer, and my 18-year-old wants to go he wants to go to college, and then he wants to go to law school, and he wants to be a lawyer as well. So what we've done has rubbed off a little bit on him as well.
Well, that's really great. That's exciting, I think, and you'll be a good role model, I'm sure. Well, what made you decide? Because I know in your bio you studied abroad for a year. I think it was a year in Sheffield University. What took you to the UK to do that? What made you go?
Well, as I said, I'm always a planner, and so when I planned where I wanted to go to college, I also looked to make sure, because I wanted to study abroad. And as I said earlier, I'm not from a wealthy family. And so in doing my research, I knew that you could go to certain universities, colleges and universities that offered study abroad programs where you could spend time in another country and it wouldn't cost you as much as if you were doing this on your own.
Right.
And so I went to the University of Chapel Hill. So I'm a Tar Heel, go Heels. And they had a study abroad program. You could do it for a semester, or you could do it for a year. And so I researched the University of Sheffield. I liked what the University of Sheffield stood for. And so I applied to study abroad for a year. And I will tell you as well, as I said, I'm a planner. So knowing that I would be there for a year, I also like traveling.
Oh,
And so I wrote down places, other countries that I wanted to visit while I was in the UK. And so I was able to travel and spend time in France, Paris, France, as well as Italy, as well as Greece, as well as Amsterdam. So I always try to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented. And so I loved my time at Carolina. I really loved my time at the University of Sheffield for that year, which gave me the chance to travel to all these different amazing countries and then come back to Carolina.
oh, that's great. And I know you've already kind of answered this question, but what made you, because I know that you said you started wanting to be in criminal law when you were really young. Was there anything besides Perry Mason that started? I mean, was there another passion that got you interested in wanting to be a prosecutor? Just, was there another reason that?
The passion to help people, the passion to help victims. Perry Mason was always on the defense side. So he always made things more exciting. He always made things more exciting. So if you go back to those shows, remember the defendants would always confess on the stand.
Yep.
And so I wanted to, so Perry was representing individuals that were charged. But my passion was being the voice for those that were victims.
Right.
So the show got me interested in criminal law. But I wanted to be on the other side. I wanted to be the person to find justice for the victims. And that became my passion. That became what drew me in. And then going to law school and learning more about the law just kept me there. And so that's what prosecutors do. We prosecute those. We also, we seek justice. We seek justice. We try to keep our community safe, and that's what I've always tried to do: seek justice where justice needs to be had.
Right. Do you like being in the courtroom? Do you like that, or?
I do. Something comes over you when you're in the courtroom. I would tell you I would try cases, and I love boots. So for all my murder cases, whether it's a skirt suit or a pantsuit, I love wearing boots. For me, it just gave me that extra edge, that extra confidence that I needed. And I mean, I was very successful. I am very successful as a trial attorney. And so I love being in a courtroom. I love interacting with the community. I loved interacting with a jury, going through jury selection, making your argument to a jury, letting them know, what happened to these victims in a particular case and how it's affected their lives, and how, as a jury, you're the ones that can help them get the justice that they're seeking. And so, yes, I love being in a courtroom.
Do you like the summation part? Because I would think that's a long preparation for that last part.
The summation, we call that the closing argument.
Closing argument.
And that is, that's when you can wrap everything up. And for me, I like it's called telling the story. Telling the story of this case, telling the story of this crime, telling the story of what a victim has gone through. And you're able to wrap everything up from the beginning to the middle to the end. And at the end, you stand there and you're saying, and this is what I used to say, I want you, members of the jury, I want you to use your reason and your common sense when you listen to this trial and you are evaluating this evidence, when you go back into the jury deliberating room, use that reason and that common sense. And I always use a flip chart. So I would always write down what I needed to prove. And in this story that I'm telling, I'm tying everything together. And I'm asking you to follow the law and to follow this diagram that I've laid out for you to find this person guilty of the crime that they are charged with. I like to consider myself a great storyteller, to try to bring it all together so that you can say, oh, she's right. Or, oh, I see it like that. Or, oh, okay, I understand. This is how that applies to the law. So it's being a great storyteller to be able to fine tune things and present it in such a way so that people understand and they can follow your roadmap to where you're leading them.
Yeah, that's great. I think that would be the exciting part of the whole trial,
Yes.
just wrapping it kind of all up. And the only thing I watch on TV when I do is crime stuff. So I don't know where I got the obsession from.
A lot of people are obsessed with law and order.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they are obsessed with law and order, and I try to explain to them, courts in North Carolina is nothing like law and order.
I'm sure.
It's not as exciting, but yes, but it is good. We do a great job.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, when you tell me about, you kind of mentioned this earlier. So when you served as assistant DA in New York, now what took you there again? And then you came back here, and I think it was because you got married, but what did you think about New York, or such a big difference from here?
It is such a big difference. And what I did like I said, I like to plan things. And when I was in law school, I knew that I wanted to be a prosecutor. I knew that I wanted to start in a big city. So I had done an internship in Chapel Hill at the district attorney's office. I did an internship at Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office. And so when I was applying for positions for district attorney, assistant district attorney positions in different offices, I wanted to start in a big city. And so I was interested in starting in either New York or starting in Philadelphia. And I ended up in Bronx County, New York. And as you know, that's huge. It's on a different, as I tell people, it's on an entirely different level for a younger lady that was raised in Statesville, North Carolina. And that's where I was from. I will tell you, my parents were nervous about me going to New York. I'm not even going to say that they were really pushing for it or in favor of it, because we didn't have any family up there. Yeah. And so I remember having a conversation with my mom saying, if something happens, we can't get to you right away because we don't have any family up there. And I would say, I'm fine. I went all the way to England. If I could go all the way to England and everything is fine, I can go to New York and survive. And so they were nervous about it. But as I said, I wanted to start my career in a large city. And Bronx County, I was there from 1997 to 99, working under the then elected DA, Robert Johnson. Met some great people. I'm able to live out my dream of helping the community and helping victims of crime. But what brought me back is I met my husband, Jason Crump. So we met in law school and we dated the entire time I was in New York, but it was time to get married. So he proposed, and we had decided that we did not want to raise a family in New York. So if we got married and started our marriage, we wanted to come back. I wanted to come back to North Carolina. I wanted to raise my children in North Carolina because North Carolina is a great place to live. And that's what brought me back. He proposed, I said yes. And with that, I moved back to North Carolina. And we moved together. We moved to Guilford County in the end of 1999, bought our first house here in 1999. And another thing, we just celebrated our 23rd anniversary on April the 24th.
Congratulations.
Of this month, yes. 23 years of marriage.
That's fantastic. Many people can say that. Oh, that's really great. And I think it's great that you're both lawyers. Because that's you would have an understanding of the type of schedules you have to keep, I'm sure, and that helps, you know.
Yes, it does. But you know what? We also are on different sides of the law. I'm a
Oh,
prosecutor, so I'm responsible for prosecuting those charged with offenses. My husband is a defense attorney, and he defends those charged with murder cases. So yes, we are on opposite sides.
how does that work? Does that,
Well, I have a passion to do what I do, and he has a passion of representing those charged to make sure that they get great representation on the other side. And so we understand each other. And as I said, we just celebrated our 23rd
yeah,
wedding anniversary on April the 24th. And it just, I mean, it just, work is work, and your home life is your home life. And we decided a long time ago, because we do not go against each other, because I work here in Guilford County and he works in Forsyth County as well as
oh,
other surrounding counties. So he works as I said, representing those charged with murder. So
wow.
he travels to different counties, but he does not come to Guilford County because that would not be allowed.
Oh, yeah, I can
Yeah.
see
So
that.
yes, so we are not allowed to work against each other, but we are on opposite sides. Um, He believes in defense, and I believe in the prosecution. But as I said, work is work, but our home life is our home life, and we have been able to make that successful for the past 23 years of marriage and 2 sons later.
That's wonderful that you can do that. That's perfect. I mean, I think that's really great. Well, so but you can support each other too because you are working in different counties.
Yes.
I mean, you know,
Mhm.
but when you made all these transitions into the legal world, and even when you became the DA, I mean, you're the first, not only the first woman, but you're the first African American woman. What was that like? And even before you came to be the DA, what was it like coming into? I mean, I know we've come a long way from years ago, but what was it like for you coming into the legal world and then becoming the DA? Mean,
Well, let me tell you, as I said, I'm a planner, but I have strong faith as
uh-huh.
well. And when I made that decision to run to be the first African American and the first female district attorney, that was not an easy decision. What we do as a family, we sit down and we discuss things. So as a family, it was my husband and my 2 sons. We sat down and we discussed. We discussed me doing this because I had just been elected as district court judge again in 2016. So I was elected in 2008. I was reelected as judge in 2012 and reelected in 2016. And so to make that decision to run to be the first female and African American DA in 2018, that required me stepping down from the bench. So I had to give up my job as a judge to be able to run for DA. And so with prayer, I'm a strong believer in faith and in prayer. And when it came to me, I prayed about it. My family prayed. We prayed together about it. And my husband said, "Go for it," because it's something that I wanted to do. And so I left the bench. I made the plan again. As I said, I'm a planner about a lot of things. And um, when the previous DA decided that he was not going to seek reelection, and um, I decided to go for it. And my family and we put everything that we had towards making sure that I would be successful. And let me tell you, once I was elected, I felt very humbled that the citizens of Guilford County had elected me, and that they understood that my passion was as a public servant. I've always tell people I'm not a politician. As a judge, I was not a politician. As a DA, I'm not a politician. I am a public servant, and I will always do what I think is right for our community and for the citizens here of Guilford County, and try to help where I can, but also make sure that that punishment is there where it needs to be as well. And but I received a lot of support when I became the first, but there was some criticism because you still have other, you still have those in the community that think that this is a male role.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will tell you, in the state of North Carolina, I am only the, sorry about that. In the state of North Carolina, there are 2 African American female district attorneys at this time. There are only 2 of us right now. We've had one previously, but it's myself and the DA, the current DA in Durham County for women. And so there's still a lot. There's still far to come, far to go, but I love my job. I think I'm great at my job, but you still have some that think that this is just this position is just for that men are better at it. I don't believe in that, obviously.
No, you don't. Do you ever converse with the woman in Durham County? At some point, did you reach out to her to say
only after we were both in office, after we were both elected, and we met at conferences and saw that we were the only 2 African American females out of, at that time, it was 44 elected DAs for the state of North Carolina. And so, yeah, so that's when we first reached out to each other, when we went to a conference together.
Right. Well, that's good though. I'm glad you did. How has it changed you being the first? Because you're 2 first.
Yes, there's a lot of responsibility. There are a lot of expectations. I like to say people are always watching. Some are watching with negative intentions, because, as I said, some people they think that this position should be held by a man. But for the most part, people have been supportive.
Yeah.
This was a hard first term, one, because of the pandemic.
Right.
So I was elected in 2018, but I didn't even take office until January the 1st. So I was elected in May of 2018. But I didn't take office. I didn't get sworn in until January the 1st, 2019.
Right.
So that first year, you're working on making changes, making positive changes, setting up programs. And then March of 2020, the pandemic hits. A lot of the courts especially in the state of North Carolina, a lot of the courts were shut down, were modified to just making sure that you could do like the first appearance courts when someone's arrested the night before. But for the most part, most of the courts were shut down. So juvenile court was still open, domestic violence court was still open, and your first appearance court was still open, but you weren't allowed to do any trials for about a year. So think about it. So crime is still happening, but you're having to continue most of the cases because the courts are shut down. So that was hard. But it was hard for everyone, whether
Right.
you're a female or a male, because no one had gone through this before. But there was also a different dynamic thrown in for me, in that the High Point office. So what people don't know is Guilford County is the only county in the state of North Carolina that has 2 fully functioning courthouses, 2 district attorney offices, 2 public defender offices, 1 in Greensboro and 1 in High Point. And so my High Point office, we have the office as well as the courthouse, we kept getting flooded.
Oh,
So
God.
yes, there was a lot of water damage that happened in 2019. It happened in 2020. It happened in 2021. And each and every time that there would be the water damage, things would get shut down. So either the office was shut down or the courthouse was shut down. The first time it was shut down for about 3 months. The second time it was about 2 months, and the third time I think it was a little over a month. And so for me, my administration was not only dealing with an unprecedented pandemic, but also with a lot of the court closures and office closures that's beyond your control, because we have nothing to, we don't control the High Point courthouse and the water damage and everything that was happening, the flooding and stuff that was happening. But you know what? But what do women do? We always make a plan. We always see it through, and we always make sure we work around. We work around the issues that we have. And I think with being able to multitask, I think that's with being a wife, being a mother, being a worker, being a public servant, that came in handy, to be able to multitask and still make sure we try to get the work done with all of the problems that kept coming our way.
Yeah, exactly. But when you became district attorney, put all that aside, like all that drama of the pandemic, had that not happened, was it an eye opener for you, or was it sort of like what you expected, the position of being the district attorney?
Yes and no to both. I had been in the office for 9 years, and so prosecution was nothing new for me, because I've been being a prosecutor for 11 years, but actually working in the Guilford County DA's office for 9 years. So that wasn't a surprise. The surprising part comes in being an employer and having 64 to now 68 people work for you, and having different personalities and different opinions and different, that's the eye opener, because you want to be accessible to your office, and you want to be able to listen and make sure people feel like they have a voice as well in the office, as well as making sure that all the work is getting done, and making sure that you're accessible to the public, and making sure that victims are being taken care of, that they have a voice, because the district attorney's office, we are the voice. We are the voices for the victims of crime. And so the eye-opening part was having so many people dependent on you, and trying to make sure that you're making the right decisions for them, making the right decisions for the office, and also being in the role to hire new individuals. You're hiring lawyers, you're hiring support staff. So I had never been in that position before, because I went from being an assistant district attorney, which is your main focus is prosecuting violent crime and having communications with your victims of crime, to now you are representing this entire office. And that's over, as I said, it went from 64 to now 68 people in 2 different cities, Greensboro and High Point, in 2 different communities, the Greensboro community and the High Point community. But also you're representing individuals from Summerfield, Oak Ridge, Sedalia, Wissett, McLeansville, yes, Colfax, Gibsonville, Brown Summit. So you have all these surrounding areas, but that is all part of Guilford County. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't know that. They don't know that Guilford County is not just Greensboro and High Point, but all of those surrounding areas that I just mentioned as well. And Jamestown, I forgot to mention Jamestown and Pleasant Garden. So
I didn't realize Pleasant Garden or Gibsonville were,
part of Gibsonville is in Guilford County, and part of Pleasant Garden is in Guilford County. And so when I became the elected DA, what I did, I wanted to bring all law enforcement agencies together. And so I started meeting with all law enforcement heads every 3 months. And so we're talking about the chief of police for Greensboro, the chief of police for High Point, the Guilford County Sheriff, the chief of police for North Carolina A&T, chief of police for UNC Greensboro, chief of police for Gibsonville. So I brought all of them together, and we meet about every 3 months, just to talk about issues and concerns that people may have in the community, concerns and ways to combat violent crime in Guilford County. But that's the kind of stuff that I do, things that I planned. And so, but yes, a lot of people don't understand Guilford County. We have all of those surrounding areas in Guilford County. And I think I named all of them, but yes. So that's a lot. We are the 3rd largest county in the state of North Carolina, and I have the 3rd largest office. in the state of North Carolina.
I didn't even realize that we were third largest. That's amazing. No,
Yes.
you've got your work cut out for you.
Yes, I do.
And your family, I'm sure you've already kind of said they've been supportive, and when you won, did they just know you were going to win, or did you know you were going to win?
I believed that I would win. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I believed that I would win. And I worked hard, including working at polling locations, getting out in the community, meeting as many people as I could, to make sure that people knew who I was, to make sure they understood what I stood for and what positive changes I wanted to bring to Guilford County. And I was blessed with the victory.
Yeah.
And I've been working hard ever since. I hit the ground running, implementing different programs and things to help the people in Guilford County.
Right. Yeah. Well, do you miss being a judge, or do you like this better? Or they're so different, really.
They're so different. They are so different. But I will tell you, I enjoyed my job as a judge. I did. That's why I served for so long. I did enjoy my job as a judge, but as a DA, it's totally different. But being the DA and having that perspective as a judge, it helps. It really does, because prosecution, your goal is not only to seek justice and also equity as well. But see, as a judge, what you're doing, you're listening to both sides. You're listening to the prosecution, you're listening to the defense, and you're applying the law to find out whether someone is guilty or whether someone is not guilty. That is a great perspective. That is great experience to have as the elected DA, because when you are evaluating cases, see, that judgeship is still on my shoulder, because you're evaluating cases and you're thinking, okay, but are we able to prove it? Knowing what you know as a judge, do you have enough to go forward on this case? And if you do not, then, okay, we do not go forward. And so I think being a judge has helped me in my career as the elected DA. It gives me a different perspective, because for so long, I'm listening to both sides and then applying the law and giving a verdict and giving a sentence. And so,
right.
But yes, but I do love my job as the DA. I mean, I'm a prosecutor at heart. I am. I enjoyed my job as a judge, but I'm a prosecutor at heart.
Well, what do you consider your most great accomplishment? Well, as a judge and the DA, is or both, or is it? I know they're so different, but
they are different. It was great to be elected as the judge. It was awesome to be elected as the first, because I'm not just the elected DA. I was the first. Yeah. I'm the first African American. I'm the first female, and that comes, it comes with extra responsibilities as well. But it also lets those know behind you that if she can do it, being raised in a small city of Statesville, North Carolina, if she can rise from that and become the elected DA of the third largest county in the state of North Carolina, I wanted to send messages to other young girls. If she can do it, you can do it. Just plan it out and follow your goals, and you can do it. Yeah. And so that is my accomplishment at being a district court judge, being elected. That was good. I enjoyed that. But I said, like, with this is awesome, because I've shattered some boundaries by being the first. I've shattered some boundaries. I've gone up to that ceiling there and said, oh, okay, I can attain this. And I did. And so what you have to do is make sure that we're doing good things, that we're doing positive things, so that, one, you can stay in this position, but two, you're setting an example for others to follow. You're setting an example for other young girls that may want to be an elected DA or may want to be an elected judge, and they're not for money. If Avery can do it, then guess what? Then I can do it. All I have to do is work hard and set a plan, and I can attain those goals as well. And that's what, that's what I tell young people whenever I speak with them. But as I said, I did enjoy my time as a judge, especially in juvenile court, because I have a passion for working with our juveniles. As you mentioned earlier, I was a certified juvenile court judge. When I left from being a judge to be the DA, I was the most senior certified juvenile court judge here in Guilford County. I provided trainings for the other juvenile court judges. So do I miss that? Yes,
Yeah.
I do. But I think that I'm also making a bigger difference in this particular role that I could not do as a judge, because you're limited to what you can do as a judge. It's listening to the evidence, applying the law. But as the DA, you can do so much more. You can start programs to help your community, which is what I've been able to do as well. So as well as being tough on violent crime, you can offer those second chances to our juvenile that have been charged with nonviolent minor offenses, so that they have an opportunity to pay back to the society by doing community service, but also having that second chance at life.
Right.
And I think that's important for any district attorney's office. And I've also started that program of the driver's license restoration program, where individuals that have lost their licenses because of financial reasons, they weren't able to pay court costs and fines and fees, and they've lost their license for 5 years or more. We've been able to help those individuals get their licenses back. These are for those minor traffic offenses. So this is nothing major. So this is not they've lost their license for driving while impaired. No, you don't qualify for my program for something like that. But
Right.
for the minor offenses, we've been able to help over 12,000 individuals get their licenses back, their driving privileges back in Guilford County.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, it's what do you do without a driver's license? It's like,
Well, some people keep driving and it just keeps that cycle going. But when you check their record, it's all because they didn't have the money to pay for that first ticket,
right.
or that second ticket. And but now you put them in a position where you've helped them get their license, and you will be amazed at how many people just come up to you and they just grab your hand and just say, thank you. I've been without a license for 10 years. Thank you so much, Madam DA. Thank you for helping. And like I said, they didn't have any bad things in their record. It's just they didn't have the money to pay.
Right.
And so that makes you feel good, because you're making a difference and you're helping your community. And it helps everyone, because you want someone to have a valid license in case there's an accident or something, so that they're properly covered and they have the insurance. And so I've explained that to individuals as well, because that helps the community. That's a good thing for people to have to be properly licensed when they're driving.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think that's a great thing that you've done. I want to talk to you about how you've handled yourself emotionally all these years with such crimes as murder and especially crimes against women and children, such as rape.
Well, it's, as I said earlier,
I'm here.
Okay.
I was trying to shut my dog up.
Those are tough crimes, and those they're very hard. It takes a certain type of individual to be able to handle those offenses. And we get training on that, but
hang on a second.
Okay.
He's never done that before, so I'm going to see if I can keep him quiet. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He just wants to be part of the interview, which is fine.
Guess so. I'm sorry.
So as I was saying, yes, those cases are tough to try. And those cases can have an emotional toll on you. You have to have a passion for doing those cases and a passion for working with those individuals. And that's what I had a passion for. And that's why I was able to prosecute those cases for so long, because, I got the training that I needed. But you do have to have that certain emotional level to be able to handle those, because they're not, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It's just not. But if you have a passion, a love of doing something, then it gets you through. And because I had that passion, because I had that love of doing those types of cases, that's why I was able to do them. And that's why that's why. But I do understand that a lot of people can't. Same thing with juvenile court. You will be amazed. A lot of lawyers don't want to work in juvenile court because they don't want to work with the juveniles. They don't want to work with the young offenders. But for me, I've always believed that our youth is our future.
Yeah.
So if you can get to them and try to get them to change their ways, then that helps them when they become adults.
Right.
Because like I said, our youth are our future. And so, but I do know there are adults that they don't want to work with juveniles. They don't want to be in that courtroom. Whereas for me, it was a passion.
Right.
It was a passion for being in there. So if you're passionate about what you do, it gets you far. It allows you to keep working.
Well, I just know I've always heard it's always hard to get women to come forward, like in rape cases. And
It is.
That would be very frustrating, and because you want to help them, but if they won't come forward.
And, those are tough cases. And that's why you understand why they don't want to come forward, because they understand and you understand that they feel that society is going to look at them differently. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe if you didn't have this on and you didn't have that on, then this wouldn't have happened to you. And so you have to explain to them that what happened to them is not their fault.
Right. What
happened to them, the way they were dressed, that did not give someone the right to do what they did to you. But Tamarah, you're correct. It's hard for some women to come forward because they don't want to go through that. They don't want to be re-victimized again, to have to tell that story, especially in front of, a jury of 12.
Yeah.
But for me, when I would sit them down and explain the process to them, and for me, I would always take them to a courtroom so they could see what it looks like. And I would always explain to them, this is where I'll be sitting. This is where the defendant and his attorney be sitting. This is where the judge will be sitting, the court reporter, the jurors, to try to get them familiar. And I did the same thing with children. When children were victims of the violent crime as well, I would take them to the courtrooms so that they could get familiar with it, and it wouldn't be this room wouldn't be as scary as they think that it is. Try to get them familiar with the surroundings. And in my experience, it helps. It helps, so that the first time that they're going to court or going into this courtroom it's not just when they come in to testify. They've been there more than once to see the dynamics of the courtroom, to see where they'll be sitting. So they're a little bit more comfortable. They're still afraid and they're still nervous about having to testify, but in my experience, we've been able to provide that comfort by taking them to where they'll be testifying, more than once, so it just makes them more comfortable.
Right. Well, I think that's good that you do that. I can't even imagine what it's like for them to go through all that. Just right. Amazing. But
it's hard. It is very hard.
But what would you say with the upcoming election? Because I know the early voting started yesterday. What are there changes you want to make? I've never understood how do you change criminals and crime? And it's like, what can you change?
Well, my motto is, I am tough on violent crime. That's not going to change. I'm tough on violent crime. I'm tough on crimes that involve guns. because we have to prevent this violent crime from happening. I do believe in second chances, as I mentioned to you, especially for our youth, but those are for non-violent offenses. And so when you say, well, what can you change?
Yeah.
You go forward on what you're doing. On the programs that I've started, I would like to continue to go forward on those programs, because those programs do help those in the community. But you're also going to still maintain being tough on violent crime and getting justice for the victims and making our community safe. That's Avery Crump in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Because yes, I mean, you need to get violent offenders off the streets.
And do you make the sentence tougher? Is that so the criminal will be? I mean, it just seems like criminals don't seem to be worried about getting called or.
Well, it's not that the DAs can make the sentences tougher, because in the state of North Carolina, we have what's called structured sentencing.
Okay.
And so there is a chart. Oh, you know what? Would you like to see the chart? See what it looks like?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a chart here. I don't even know if you can see it.
Wow.
And so for every crime that's committed, everyone falls into a box on that chart. And so it's not the DAs that are giving tougher sentences, because remember, judges, and as a former judge myself, judges are responsible for giving out sentences.
Sentence, yeah.
Yes, a judge is the one that sentences a defendant, someone that's been convicted of a crime. But as DAs, we go by chart. It's called the structured sentencing chart here in North Carolina. And when someone is convicted or charged with an offense, their attorneys go over the same chart with them and say, this is where you fall. Now, does that prevent crime from happening? No.
Yeah.
No. But as I said, I am tough on violent crime. And so, so we go forward on that to try to keep our community safe and our streets safe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know it's got to be hard either way, because especially if you're dealing with something where you get the death penalty involved and things like that. I mean, I don't even know how I feel about that. I just, it's just a whole nother issue, I guess. But
Yes.
but I think it's great what you're doing and that you're so passionate about it. What would you say is the most challenging thing about your job? And what's been the most rewarding, I guess?
The most rewarding is being able to seek justice for victims of crime, being able to help those that need help. As I said, helping people get their driver's license back, setting up free programs for our youthful offenders when they're charged with nonviolent offenses. That's been very rewarding to me. Having the conversation with the victim and they just want to give you a hug because they got justice in court, and or they're thankful that they had a voice in court. That's always rewarding. Challenging for me in this position, as I indicated earlier, was when the pandemic happened and so many courts were shut down and people just couldn't get the justice that they needed as quickly as they wanted it. And having to explain that. So not just the pandemic, but also in High Point, when I said we had so many court closures, courthouse closures, because of the constant flooding that was happening over there, and having to call victims up and explain to them why their cases have been continued, because we don't have court. There's water damage. There's there could be mold in there, and it's taking them time to get things aired out, to get things dried out.
Right.
That's always challenging. Being responsible for over 60 employees,
I wouldn't like that. I hope
Having
you're not
60
all
different,
women.
what'd you say?
I
What'd
hope
you say?
you're not all women.
No, but the majority are. And so that comes with challenges in and of itself. But I will tell you, I work with a great group of people. I do. I work with
Good.
a great group of people. But as I said, you're still dealing with different personalities. And so that can be very challenging.
Well, that's that's just a whole nother. I know. It's just a lot. I don't know how you do it, but I you've kind of answered most of my questions, but I wanted you to. There was one question that really doesn't pertain to what you do because you're a a servant for the people, whatever. But just out of curiosity, there's always been this discord between the parties in America, and it just seems to keep escalating over the years. And so, as you as a woman, not a DA or a politician or anything, what would you like to see happen in our country and the community? Just that, have you ever sat down and thought, well, what can we do to create more unity versus the division? Because it would kind of make everything go easier.
People just need to be nicer to each other.
Yeah,
No, it's like the past few years, or even a little longer, people they're just not as nice as they used to be.
I agree.
And it shouldn't matter which party you're a part of. Just be nicer, be more respectful to each other. And that would go a long ways. That's all. Just be nicer and be more respectful to each other. And it shouldn't matter, as I said, what your party affiliation is. Because if you're nice to people, if you're respectful, you can get a lot more accomplished.
I
You can
agree.
get a lot more accomplished. Mhm.
And I think we need a balance anyway,
Yes,
so, a little bit
yes,
of this, a little bit of this side, a little bit of that side. So,
right.
yeah.
And this is not me speaking as a DA. This
Yeah.
is just me speaking as a regular citizen, as a
Mhm.
wife, as a mother. Just be nice.
Yeah.
Just be respectful. Do away with all the name calling, and we just need to come back. We need
Yeah.
to take a deep breath, and I think everyone just needs to come back to just being nice and being willing to listen, even those that may not agree with your side. Um, just be willing to listen. You don't have to agree with them, but just be willing to have an open mind.
Exactly.
That's it. When I was raised, I was always told, if you don't have anything nice to say about someone, then don't say it at all.
Exactly. I agree. That's true. And, well, one that before with the election going on, is there anything you would like to say if someone local's watching this interview and as to why that you should be reelected? Or I hope that's not a tacky question, but I just,
All I would say is, people, please do your research. Um, you should always do your research on your candidates and know what as I said, I'm not a politician. I'm always a public servant. Know what your public servants do for you.
right.
That is very important. Know what your public servants do for you. And, what we do is not an easy job, especially in the environment that we're in right now, because there is a lot of vitriol that's out there. But do your research. Do your research. And remember Avery Crump.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a great answer. It really is. I think more people need to research anyway. And real quick before we end, is there any advice? You sort of gave some advice earlier, but anything else you want to add about the advice to anyone watching that wants to get into criminal law or do what you want to, similar to what you're doing, or?
I would say, one of the things that I did when I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer, I looked at schools where, the schools that could get me the best education for me for the cheapest price. So for me, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, great school, but it's also a public school. So for me, going to a private school was never an option.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said before, I'm not for money. I wanted the best bang for my buck, the best education for my dollars. And just when you make that decision, when you decide that you want to go into law, just know that that's 7 years. It normally takes you 4 years for undergrad and 3 years of law school. But what we have now, like my son, my 18-year-old, he'll be actually attending UNC Chapel Hill in August. It's not going to take him 4 years to get through school because he was in a magnet program, and we didn't have those when I graduated from high school. That was a long time ago. And so he's actually going in with over 40 credit hours. And so it's not going to take him 2 years to graduate, but have a plan. Those that are watching that are interested in law, have a plan. Do well in school and decide which law school you want to do. Before just deciding on any law school, do your research. I'm all about doing research. Do your research so that you can go to the best law school that there is for you, because every law school is not for everyone. For you, that will give you that step up that you need when you decide to practice law.
Great. I think that's great advice. And I like your story. I mean, you've really worked hard. And so it's been a pleasure having you here today, Avery. I want to thank you again for being here today. Is there anything you want to mention that we didn't cover? Or?
I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
I think we've covered everything. And please know that Guilford County is a great place to live.
Yeah.
And raise a family. It's a great place to live and raise a family.
Well, that's good to hear too. I've been here all my life, so I know. Well, I want to thank the viewers too for their continued support. And please share this video, this interview, the YouTube replay on your social media sites and help so that I can continue to celebrate Avery. And if you're local, early voting opened yesterday. So if you're local, get to the polls. And Avery's website is www.crump4da.com. And stay tuned for more live interviews with talented people from all over the world. And to your own success out there, keep rocking it, and we'll see you soon.